Okay, everyone, a few bits of news, so pay attention. Roy with a bad leg is going to be okay, but we've taken him somewhere so he can be looked after. So no more need to worry about him. Now we are here, we're going to stay for a bit. It's pretty safe, but we don't want prying eyes latching onto us, so no running around unless you've checked with us, and definitely no going beyond the walls without us. There are people out there who are collecting kids and taking them to homes somewhere else, but we don't trust them. As for the big outside, we don't know what's going to happen. Things are kind of quiet, but there are no comms, no phones or anything. Just a few bits of news from people who've walked in. Lastly, we can get food and stuff from a couple of places, but not loads, so don't be greedy. He sat sipping from his cup. From what Mella could see, he was only pretending to be relaxed. She wondered what his name was. Not that it made any difference. At least they had shelter and food and seemed to be safe. Rich nudged her and winked. Okay? Mella nodded, but held her hand in front of her mouth and whispered, What homes? Where are they? I've heard of them, but they're not here. They take you away in buses. He grimaced. Mella shivered at the thought of someone taking her further from home. He put a hand on her arm. We're here. We'll be okay. They both stood and helped with the collection of the bowls and the cups, putting them on a trolley that sat by the door. Maybe it had been there all along. Mella couldn't remember. Come with me. Grumpy Girl stood in front of them and clearly assumed they would push the trolley. The corridor was cold and noisy as they rattled past several sleeping rooms and a couple of closed doors before reaching an area with a couple of big sinks and a large cooker-looking thing. Basic, but clearly with running water. A large bin sat by a door open to the outside. The sour smell rising from it wrinkled Mella's nose. She tried not to retch. It was clear they had no choice, though. It'll be someone else's turn tomorrow, but make sure you do a good job. We don't want rats. She stomped off. Mella waited until the thud of her footsteps no longer bounced along the corridor. Rich, who does all this? Where does the food come from? Where is Roy gone? Not too sure, Mel. At least we get to eat. He rolled his sleeves up to his elbows and turned on the tap sitting above the sink. Good job everyone was so hungry. Doesn't do to waste food these days. We can both rinse, then put them in the other sink to drain. Use a cloth or your hands will get too cold. Let's do the cups first. They're cleaner. Oi! He jumped back as Mella accidentally sprayed him with the freezing water. Careful what way you hold that thing, girl. Mella giggled. Your face. Rich grinned back at her. It's bloody freezing. They soon settled into a rhythm, but by the time they'd finished, Mella's hands were purple with cold. Stick them under your arms, they'll soon warm up. I can't feel them. Mella ran on the spot. Her hands hurt as they warmed. Thank God she wouldn't be doing it every time. She stepped across the room to look out the door, glad of the fresh breeze that was flowing in. She could smell rain. Mella, don't! She jumped back, face flushing. I didn't go out. Yeah, but seriously, this place may be watched. You don't know. Sorry I shouted, but it seems safe here. She sighed. Rich was a good person in her eyes, and annoying him was not what she wanted to do. Chill out, Mel. I just want you to be careful. There are some not so good people out there. The howl of a siren very close by jolted them both. They grabbed each other, not sure what to do. Slamming and bolting the door, they ran down the corridor, grabbing people from the rooms along the way. By the time they'd joined the others, there were sirens going off across the city. They hadn't sounded for such a long time, it was a shock to hear them again. Some of the children were crying. Mella wanted to cry too, but held off. Rich squeezed her hand tight. He tried to smile. It didn't work. The dog was whining, ears back, tail between its legs. Within minutes, sirens were sounding from all directions, drowning out all other noise, all thought. Mella curled tighter into a ball, while somehow managing to keep hold of Rich's hand. He held on to her, stroking her hair, repeatedly whispering words she couldn't make out at first. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. His breath was hot on her head. She wasn't sure who he was trying to convince, but was glad of the distraction. Mella started counting her breaths in time with Rich's words, blocking anything else that might. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only when she started feeling cold did she register that he'd pulled away, and the wailing sirens had been replaced by a deep and imminent silence. Usually the next thing that happened was explosions and crashings and screams, but for now there was nothing. She held her breath and slowly opened her eyes, squinting to see what everyone else was doing. The littlest ones stared round the room with no idea of what was happening. Dog Boy and Grumpy Girl and the other older ones were talking in whispers, completely ignoring the rest of the room, but going by animated gestures the discussion was lively. Dog Boy looked grim. Grumpy Girl surprisingly calm. How long to sit like this, wondering what was happening, what they should do? Mella's feet had gone to sleep. She stretched out, wincing at the warm, needly feeling as they came back. She ran her fingers through her hair. She had a sudden desire to run and keep on running until it all went away. The uncertainty, the fear, the hunger, the loss. At that last thought, she wanted to yell loud and long until all the pain had gone. Holding all that in took her breath away. She hit her head once, twice, more, only stopping when Rich grabbed her hand. Mel, look at me! Rich grabbed both her hands, making her jump. Listen, girl. No bombs, no crashes. I'm here. We're all here. We're safe. She wondered how he could be so calm, but his words and his tone did help. She breathed slower. A tear tickled her cheek. She hadn't known she was crying. She quickly brushed it away. She looked up at the older children, willing them to say something. Dog Boy stood up, his dog squeezing tight against his legs, still with its ears back, panting. Okay, this is new. Best we sit tight for now. We have enough food. At the moment we have water. We don't know what's going to happen though, so don't be greedy. Do as you're told about washing and stuff, and be clean. We don't need people getting sick. You two, it was a girl speaking and pointing at Rich and Mella. You're good with the kids, keep at it. Now that her feet were back to life, Mella stood and stretched. Rich stood with her, smiling briefly before turning to cajole the kids to stand up too. Anyone heard of Simon Says? It's easy, just copy me. Simon says, do this. He stood tall, arms above his head, smiling broadly. Simon says, do this. Now he flopped like a rag doll, Mella following his lead, watching to see what the children did too. After only a few moves, with some not managing to keep up and Rich making things more and more difficult, they were mostly soon laughing. Even the Grumpy Girl, glancing across from the whispering, cracked a bit of her version of a smile. Not too much noise, you lot. The afternoon drifted past as Rich and Mella set them playing games they'd almost forgotten, and soon it was time to eat again. Come and give us a hand, will you? Grumpy Girl gestured from the doorway and headed off down to the kitchen, Rich and Mella following with a trail of the kids, curious. While she and Ray, brother of wounded Roy, opened cans and tipped the contents into a huge pot they'd started bubbling on the cooker thing that seemed to run on a gas cylinder piped in through the wall, Rich and Mella enlisted the help of the more capable of the other children. Even some of the really little ones helped carry things. Nobody talked much, and Mella noticed the grey and tired faces of the children, dark rings under their eyes. Maybe it was lack of being outside. She knew that wasn't very good, but couldn't remember why. Mum had made sure she spent a little time out every day. The thought of Mum and Patch the dog and then the rest of home life was in danger of stopping Mella in her tracks. She pinched her leg to keep her thinking about what to do next. The lost feeling of what had happened to send her here was too much. Rich? What are their names? Who? Dog Boy and Grumpy Girl. Oh! Rich laughed out loud as he chivied their helpers along the corridor. I thought you knew them. The boy is Cliff, the girl is Deb. Thanks. Why didn't you ask sooner? Not sure, didn't think of it. Thank you, though. It won't change what they're like, though, will it? She has such an angry face. She frightened me to start with. He still does. That dog is so big. It's a softie though, Mel, except if folk who get too close to its boss. Mella liked dogs and missed Patch a lot when she thought of him, but that one was not like the dogs she had known. It was a street dog and only interested in its owner. Maybe she should give it more of a chance if Rich trusted it. Cliff and Deb. What sort of name was Cliff? Seemed a bit old-fashioned to her. It certainly wasn't a name she'd heard before. How was he running this gang? How had he pulled them all together, these children, and why? What would be so bad about the children's place? Mel, you're daydreaming. She jumped. Rich sounded impatient. It was true, she had been. Things were easier if you didn't, if you just thought about what came next. Rich seemed good at that, although of course she wasn't inside his head to really know. It didn't take long to settle the kids around the table. Deb and Ray wheeled the stew pot in, using the trolley and handing out bowls of stew. It smelt surprisingly good, but looking at it wasn't a good idea. Not the sort of mixture anyone would be used to. Mella tested it with her tongue. She caught Rich pulling a face at her and pulled one back before eating the whole spoonful. It tasted okay too, really good in fact. It didn't take many mouthfuls to clear up what she had. Judging by the clattering around her, everyone else was doing the same. When she looked up and along the table, the children were already stuck in the bowls, although it looked as though one or two of the smallest ones had fallen asleep with their heads on the table. She never thought about time anymore, not the actual hours and minutes. There was being awake and asleep and the time between meals and sometimes a standout moment, some of them even good. And in the background to all of it, the dark space where her family used to be. No, not used to. Should.